I am joined by Opposition Senator Jayanti Lutchmedial to continue our conversation with regards to local government elections. This one seems to be growing. It might be blowing up, folks. And one of the interesting things, because I talk a lot about political policy and ideology, and the government for this election has decided they'll make the local government reform the issue of the election, which is ironic because it should have already have started before the election was called. So all of a sudden, it's now a campaign issue. But that's what we heard from the PNM at their special convention. I think that was the main thing that they spoke about. But Senator Lutchmedial, I would be very curious with regards to the UNC's proposed policies now or campaign issues that you all want to raise for this upcoming local government election.
Hi, good morning, Sean, and thanks for having me on again. Good morning to all of your viewers. So I think that this campaign and the way the campaign is unfolding on both sides really demonstrates the fundamental difference between UNC and PNM. You would have heard the PNM campaigning on a local government reform. Local government reform is a bill that they brought last year. We did have issues with it because of certain aspects of it in terms of how minority parties and so on will be represented at the council when you have the executive council, etc. But the main point of this is the fact that having passed this legislation a year ago, having proclaimed only one piece of it in, I think it was the end of October, early November last year, what has actually been delivered from then to now by the central government in terms of local government reform? You see, that's the law, the bill that's passed, the local government reform bill is there. It is a matter of implementation. And you don't have to vote for the PNM to implement a law. What you need is a government and people who can actually implement a law. And the PNM has an implementation deficit. They have been the most delinquent government when it comes to implementing policy. I can give you an example. They came up with this policy about fighting crime and raising the conviction rate by implementing, certain amendments to the Evidence Act and video recording of confession statements so that it will be easier to have them stand up in court, etc. Where is that to date? Nothing has happened. I think that has happened maybe more than a year ago. That's maybe 2 years ago they put that into place. They came into office in 2015 and met a fully passed, partially proclaimed procurement regulation. How much of it have they rolled out? How much of it is actually doing? They're now started some 8 years later to get it done. They have a problem with implementation. So we are not campaigning in the UNC on this local government reform because that's already the law. It has been passed. And it's a matter of implementing it. We are campaigning on the implementation of real policies that will affect the lives of people. Sean, no matter where you go in this country right now and you ask, well, what do you think is the biggest issue facing the population? The answer is crime. The PNM are avoiding the topic of crime altogether for good reason, I suppose, on their part. What can they say, right? They have been absolute complete failures when it comes to dealing with the crime situation, so they could say nothing. We have put forward policies dealing with security, and we are utilizing and showing people how we intend to utilize local government resources to assist with crime. Where does crime start? It starts in youth. Anybody you speak to, we had JSCs recently with the judiciary. We have talking to TTPS. Everybody's talking about youth and tackling crime from the level of the youth. We are talking about putting municipal police officers in the schools to help with the scourge of school violence. Because if you tackle it from there, you can actually make an impact long term. And this is part of, the UNC has vision. And that's something that the PNM totally lacks. The UNC is looking at the root cause, the start of the problem, where it begins in the schools. We are going to utilize the municipal police and every single corporation to try to deal with the scourge of school violence. We have also promised that in residential areas, we are saying we are going to support this call that has been made over and over and over again by various residential communities throughout Trinidad and Tobago, that they would like to secure the communities by the use of, security boots and so on to limit the inflow of traffic and so on. This has been something that has been called for by many communities, and I will speak to San Fernando, particularly where I live and where I'm assisting in this election, over and over and over, and the PNM continuously refused to do it. in a UNC-controlled corporation, the Pinal Debe Regional Corporation, recently, one community in Palmas, which technically is in San Fernando, but it falls in the Pinal Debe Regional Corporation, that approval was granted. And if you speak to anyone in that community, they are quite happy with the results of having the Residents Association work with the regional corporation. They have erected a barrier. They have security, which the Residents Association, has procured on their own, and they're managing it and so on. And they are very pleased with the sense of security that they get in their home right now. That was a community that had some serious robberies taking place before. We are willing to support that. We are tackling it. Secure streets, secure families, secure homes, secure your schools. That's how we are going. And we are going with, it's all well and good to talk about, grand pie in the sky ideas about reform and so on. The real reform to local government came under the People's Partnership when we introduced proportional representation, so that people were able to have better representation in the form of aldermen and with a proportionate, because many people recognize the importance of proportional representation and not just a first past the post system. That was real reform. We implemented that, and now you have that. And what we are doing now is we are campaigning on issues that will really change the lives of people. After crime, the second and third most important things that everybody's talking about, the state of flooding because of the lack of the resources to clear waterways and to construct drains. And the next thing, the state of the roads. And that's what we're dealing with. The PNM talk about they had to form a secondary roads company and pump money into it. They put it under the purview of rural development and local government, saying that, yes, this will be the problem. Then God knows what happened. They take it up and they move it under the Ministry of Works and Transport. How many roads have they fixed to date? I don't know. They've only gone now into the corporations now where they're hoping to win, like Sandy Grandy, and start to do some quick work. I hope it doesn't turn out like the Manzanilla Bypass Road, where $14 million is now being washed into the sea again. But that's the difference between UNC and PNM in this particular election campaign.
Well, one of the things I do have to ask, because we see this potentially being played out in Tobago, where at the end of the day, the allocation of money being granted is determined by central government, the Minister of Finance, etc. And to be fair to Tobago, that is potentially an issue that is hamstringing them, at least to some extent. Not everybody is going to say that, well, it's that's the main reason or the only reason why things can't get done. I have heard similar things with regards to local government. I even had, I think, some of your own councillors from San Grande, I can't remember which corporation, basically talking about funding issues. So I do have to ask.
Yeah, not getting the releases, yes.
Right.
That's true. So that's the thing about central government, you and local government. You depend, although money is allocated in the budget to you, if the money isn't released, you are hamstrung.
So my question is, to some extent, is there any concern? You might have the ideas, but without the resources, without the money being released, is there anything that could be done to kind of mitigate that? Because that seems to be the ongoing problem, not just with UNC corporations, health corporations, but even with certain PNM-held municipal corporations, resources have been quite tight.
Well, I will tell you, that is a problem that you have to solve in a general election. And that's something and that's why people are criticizing us and saying that we are talking about issues that aren't local government issues. But at the end of the day, it's central government and the inefficiency, and I would say the spite and the malice and sometimes the bad mind of central government affects the ability of regional corporations to do their jobs. So I will give you, over the last 3 years, you would have heard repeatedly from the Pinal Debe Regional Corporation, one of the largest health corporations serving thousands of burgesses, but it's a fully 100% UNC controlled corporation, and they are always begging for releases. There's money there to be released for them to deal with the clearing of drains and minor water courses, for them to construct better box drains, and they are a corporation that is inundated with flooding every time rain falls. From last year November to now, they were begging for the Ministry of Works to come and rebuild the embankment in a particular area. Last week, flood came, the embankment wasn't rebuilt, flood. Hundreds of people flooded out again. And that's just an issue with central government. So if you are discontent about the way that your regional corporation is able to spend the money allocated to them and get the money and actually do it to, use it to serve you, then I'm sorry, but you just have to change central government. That's the only way that you can get it done. Somehow we didn't have all of these problems before. We had ministers of local government who were efficient in terms of getting money released and getting the corporations working and getting them to do what they had to do. So that is a central government problem. At the end of the day, though, I think that the policies you put forward and how you intend to roll them out and put them out there, it should be, enough reason to at least elect someone who will advocate on your behalf. You don't want, and this is the problem that I think some of the PNM corporations have, and people who live in PNM corporations speak to me and tell me all the time. They say, well, our councillor, he wants this central government, he's PNM and the PNM are in power, so he's not going to come out and talk about it.
Right.
So do you want a representative who is coming out to seek your interest and make sure that your drain is getting clean and there are releases to make sure that your roads are being patched and so on? Or do you want a representative who is going to toe the party line and not rock the boat because he belongs to the same party as the central government? I think that's a critical question for people to ask in this election.
I actually find it interesting. I think you just said that some of the issues that you mentioned, people are saying, well, those are national issues, they're not local government issues. Mm-hmm. I actually found that the flooding, to some extent at least, should be a local issue. And I do wonder if having a central government body trying to manage those things, road repair, flooding, and at least street level crime at all local levels throughout the country, if that's a bit of an uphill battle that doesn't make any sense. In your opinion, should it be that, I mean, you all have the policy, so this might be an easy layer, but should it be that these issues should really be given to the local government representatives and the resources should be given to them to deal with them, and that should be the first line of trying to solve these problems?
I mean, there's certain powers that you can exercise at that level. But I do believe that perhaps more autonomy for our local government agencies. At the end of the day, though, you need to have checks and balances in place. And there are just some things that you can't leave to local government. Major roadways and highways and so on. You can't leave that to local government. I think that there's too much planning and allocation of resources and so on and policy. Because again, if you look at a major highway, you may have highways passing through the San Fernando, what is the San Fernando City Corporation, but you want some sort of plan of how traffic feeds into that highway, how you manage the congestion in different parts of it, all that. It affects other corporations. So you need a sort of national overview when it comes to highways and so on and major roadways. Again, I think there's a very clear line of demarcation in terms of what is the responsibility of Ministry of Works and what is the responsibility of regional corporations or municipal corporations. And I think that is clear. If you need to reassign some of them because what is now minor has become major or whatever it is, it's not impossible. It's been done before. What you really just need to have give them the resources to treat with what is under their purview. Let them handle what is under their purview now, and let us see that they could do it, but give them the resources to do so. Now, the PNM's answer to that, and I'll touch on this very briefly, their answer to that is, well, okay, that's why we bring in property tax. Let them collect the property tax and let them sort out themselves and manage their business, and they'll have money to spend. So are you telling me that with all of the money you've allocated in the last 8 years to local government, we are in a state of shambles at the moment, and your response is that, well, if you want your local government representative patch your road, clean the drain, pick up your garbage, whatever, I must come and tax your home? I find that to be offensive, ridiculous, and completely unwarranted at a time like this when you have hundreds of people in this country who have assets. And I don't know how to drill this into the head of these PNM ministers. And they understand, but they can't answer it and they will never address it. You have hundreds of people coming out of an economic decline, coming out of the closure of so many of our businesses, from the petroleum refinery and all the other plants suffering from shortage of gas, etc., etc. You have people who have lost over 6,000 small businesses being closed and never reopening during the COVID pandemic. People have assets, but they do not have cash, and you are coming to impose a new tax on them. And that, to me, is morally, ethically, politically, every type of wrong that it could be. It is wrong at this point in time, and we oppose it, vehemently oppose the imposition of new taxes on the population at this point in time. And that is the only answer the PNM has to the inefficiency in running local government. They are now saying, well, don't worry, you will pay more tax if we win local government, you will pay more tax, and then the regional corporation will spend the money. I find that to be the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. And I cannot see how you can campaign and ask people. I can't see how anybody could vote for more tax in an election. We are really, really, really concerned about this property tax, and many people are. And I think that between property tax and crime, those are just the two major reasons why nobody should vote for the PNM in this election.
Well, okay, so my last question, we don't have much time, so it'll have to be really quick. Because you did also mention the fact that some of it might have to be a general election issue. So
Yes.
we've spoken about it on this show. Karen has brought this up multiple times, that this local government is kind of like a dress rehearsal. We get the pulse of the nation here, but more so than potentially any other local government election before, especially potentially with the timing of how everything's going to fall. Is it that the UNC identifies that and is sort of gearing up to treat with that?
Well, I mean, I think in every term, once you cross half the term, you understand that, look, okay, you have an idea the general election will be, 2.5 years away, that kind of thing, and you start gearing up. But we are always gearing up to the general election, because at the rate things are going in this country, at some point in time, they just have to give up, because everything is falling apart. And but yes, I do believe that it is sort of a dress rehearsal. I think that we have to. I think that people are, again, from my experience on the ground, people are very focused on national issues at this point in time, gearing up to this election. So it is creating a lot of conversation around national issues, and people actually are asking more. When I walk in different communities, I'm not asked so much about local government issues. I'm asked more about national issues. And so that tells me that people are starting to think nationally and thinking national issues, and may vote in this election based on national issues like crime, the economy, the security of their jobs, etc., etc. And that it certainly does, indicate that it's something that's going to carry into a general election.
Well, Senator, that's all the time we have. We have to break for news on the hour, as you know, on WESN. But I want to thank you for joining me again to have these conversations, and look forward to seeing you next week. We'll see what else happens in the national sphere of our politics.
Thank you again for having me. Have a great day.
You too, Senator.